Okay, so welcome to everyone who's watching today. Thank you to my subscribers who've been here for a while, and also welcome to any new subscribers that are watching Arise Humanity on my YouTube channel. My name is Medina Labakan, and today I am super chuffed. I don't know if that's an Aussie word, but I'm really happy to introduce the beautiful Amanda DeMarco. And Amanda is called Indigo Angel 222 on YouTube, and she does some incredible work that I find really, really impressive that not a lot of other people are doing at this moment on the planet. She considers herself to be a global planetary grid reader. She's the author of the book How to Read Celestial Akashic Starseed Origins, and she has master avatar abilities. So she teaches avatar energy mechanics, techniques for enhancing psychic abilities, integrating interdimensional navigation, grid scanning, and remote viewing. And I've got all her contact information below as well for anyone that wants to contact her. And I think you're going to be blown away by her level of knowledge and wisdom that she has in these areas. And I have to say, Amanda, too, I feel like being an energy healer and energy worker, I have a natural resonance with you and what you do. But I also, my favorite number is 222, and I get it everywhere I go. I go, like, I'll sit at a table, be number 22, and I used to live at number 22, a house, and 222 comes up all the time for me. The angel number 222, from my understanding, is a master builder number. It resonates with ancient wisdom, vision, idealism, dedication, selflessness to others in your work that you're doing for the planet, transformation, and it's a number of with a message of faith and trust. What's your understanding of the number 222? Just to start.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your channel. I was really excited when you reached out to me, so it's a pleasure to be here and to talk with you and all of your subscribers today. So thank you for having me. 222 is definitely a number that has been following me for the entirety of my life path as well. Even my phone number, I have an abundance of twos that when I give it out to other people, they're like, they have to ask me a couple of times. Like, I'm like, yes, there's that many twos. I see it as a higher humanitarian code. And so I really have just held that frequency of that numerological encoding as a part of my humanitarianism here on this earth. And so I just work with the numbers as a part of what I do here on this earth as a global and planetary grid reader and healer.
Brilliant. Oh, and thank you for saying that. That was really beautiful. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, total honor for me to talk to you, I can tell you. So anyway, we'll get stuck in. There's lots to cover. And the big elephant in the room today is, I've got to mention just to start with that Facebook Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp just went down temporarily. You could bring them up on your information, but you couldn't post or anything. And we were just saying that we both felt a positive energy from that. I intuitively felt this incredible buoyancy, or this incredible sense of excitement that this was a really positive thing, like a shift from an old energy to a much more benevolent energy. And I think you were tuning into that too. So that's really exciting today, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I've been just starting to kind of get more intel that's kind of starting to filter in on what's kind of going on with that. But yes, there's definitely major shifts that are being cleared out within the social media networks, and honestly trying to make these platforms, riding that frequency of the 222 and that higher humanitarian code to make the internet a much safer place. I think so. Just as, we had the earthquakes that were kind of clearing out the DUMBs and kind of clearing out a lot of the dark occult forces that are, you know, penetrating the grids in terms of what's happening with the children and things like that. It's kind of similar when we have these types of things that happen that kind of break down. It's actually, you know, the matrix system that's kind of decoding the old things and the old structures that are not really working anymore. So
exactly.
yeah.
And auspicious that our chat is today when that actually happens. So yay. So,
yeah. I'm happy that the internet is working well for us today. We have a very clear. Yeah.
Exactly. I was wondering about Zoom, whether it would actually work. So yay, that was another positive. Fantastic. So what I wanted to start with talking about was just a little bit of brief background about yourself and how you got the abilities that you have, because still in a 3D sense, you still look very, very young, and you know, to have all these abilities and gifts. I know it took me a long time in this lifetime to develop my own awareness and my abilities and gifts. So please, you know, just give us a little bit of background about yourself. I love that.
Yeah, sure. So as I was kind of telling you before, when we kind of jumped on, my awakening was very intense. My awakening happened in about 2013. I want to say, though, that I was always very sensitive to energy, even as a child. I remember seeing light beings and angels as a child. I remember angels communicating with me through other people and also through animals as well when I was a child. And I was very open to those things then. But, you know, as I kind of progressed and a lot of the maternal wounds kind of impacted my life very deeply, you know, as I kind of got a little bit older, I kind of went down a lot of rough paths and a lot of, you know, dark places and spaces that really broke me, that really took me to the brink of my life, and really came to a couple of points where I had some profound near-death experiences, really broke my immune system down at that time. And I think that's what allowed me to access my spiritual understanding at a much greater level. Went through a very intense embodiment phase where, you know, Mother Mary just came to me and really resurrected my spirit at a time that was very difficult for me. And so I went through a long phase of really kind of walking through the spiritual realm as if it was my existence, as if it was my total reality. There was no separation. And so I really, truly was the crazy person at the family parties for a few years where people were like, do not go talk to her. Something's really, there's a screw loose. From those times, though, I've learned how to integrate a lot of the information and interpret it for myself, but then also kind of develop it in a way that I can now kind of share it with other people. But it took a lot of time of you know, rebuilding up my immune system, learning how to navigate the interdimensional realms,
Yes.
and just being able to really deliver that, because there was a period of my ascension that I expanded so far off into the galactic realms that I truly did not believe I was even a human anymore. And that was for a couple of years. And so I was this, you know, reflection of myself, seeing myself from this super expanded cosmic perspective and just kind of operating my human and really just trying to dodge and weave all of the limitations of my human humanness.
Yes, even with language, to be able to decipher and translate all that cosmic information and knowledge into the human language so that it's understandable. I mean, that's like translating a language, isn't it? It would be very challenging as well, I imagine. And it's so interesting to hear that it's not only your soul history or soul that has held this information, but it was that process of breaking perhaps down the ego or that 3D
Mm-hmm.
human in order to access that information. And they say 1 in 3 people have nervous breakdowns, for example, on the planet, and those nervous breakdowns are a breakdown of that old perhaps paradigm, and people can also see that as an opportunity to rebuild something much more expansive and better perhaps as well.
Yes, absolutely. I do feel there is a huge level and component that the central nervous system is very affected. The vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve in the body, it definitely goes through a major impact when we start talking about what's kind of happening on a molecular level inside the body when one goes through ascension. And so, yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Lovely. Well,
Yeah.
it's great to hear your story, because I think people can really learn from that. And if they feel that they're experiencing a lot of challenges and perhaps suffering or whatever, that there's always an enormous gift in that once you go through it. And it's never a permanent thing, but it's always part of that process. Well, not always, but it can be part of that process of just getting to something way more better for your soul and for your evolution. So I think that gives people hope. So that's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's so much information that you have, but I do feel you've spent a lot of your wonderful gifts just recently focusing on Australia. You've done 3 amazing videos on Australia, and they are full of information. I encourage people to watch those videos. I'll put some links below. And in that information, which I went through with great enthusiasm, because it does explain a lot at the moment of what's happening in Australia, and why there has been so much corruption and tyranny and seeming nefariousness that's been bubbling up.
Mm-hmm.
When we just look at for example, the police forces and the politics and the incredibly ridiculous overreaching of mandates and all this sort of thing. So I think that it explains a lot when you look at the grid systems, the ley lines, the earth, the crucialness of Australia to the planet and to the overall global sort of story. So perhaps just very briefly, if you can, just give us a little overview of why you think Australia is a key component in what's unfolding in the world at the minute.
Well, I want to just say first and foremost that I have a lot of love and compassion for all of our Aussies and everyone who's living in the land of Oz, as I've been kind of calling it, and the rest of the world calls it. I've had a lot of people reach out to me with a lot of tears and a lot of just heavy density that they're carrying. They're trying to understand why all these things are happening, and these are people who are reaching out. They're not a part of the unawakened collective, or those that are just going with the mandates. These are people that are genuinely concerned, because they're resisting wanting to go along with the Jim Jones juice, or the jab is what we're kind of calling it in our decoding words.
Yes, I go like that.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of struggles, because I think it's breaking up a lot of families internally, because you have the black sheeps of the family and those who are resistant, and they're getting pressure from their husbands or their spouses or their family members.
So much division, yes.
Creating more division. And so, so many people right now are really going through a lot there. Not that the rest of the world's not, because we're very much going through it here, but there definitely is a strangulation energetically that's kind of on Australia right now. And so what I'm kind of seeing is it's for a lot of reasons. So it's very multidimensional. How I kind of look at it in terms of the Earth's history, the Earth's grids, the totality of the storyline that's kind of playing out, this really does, it's very ancient.
Yes.
And it goes back to the time of Mu. It goes back to the time of Lemuria, and the cycles that are kind of still repeating from these particular timelines.
Yes.
Australia is so important because the original Australians, or the original, I think they are the Anangu people. These are kind of the gatekeepers of some very sacred sites that are very imperative to the global spiritual immune system of the earth. They're very imperative to the conscious crystal grid networks that are on this earth, that people who carry the energetic encodement in terms of those who are either aligned on a Pleiadian level, or who are, descendants of the Anangus, those who can have the abilities to access the dream time spaces, which I know this is really particular to the bloodlines of the Anangus, particularly, who can access this.
Can I tell you that I can confirm exactly what you're saying? I have a friend, I'm very blessed to say, who is an original, who has an incredibly pure ancestral DNA bloodline. And he was actually saying to me that, what you've just been speaking about, and that he confirms that the need to work with the grid lines, in Australia, how we need to really learn how to clear them and work with them. And he's actually wanting to set up group to work with these, and which I've actually done on Tuesday nights. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. But
yeah, no, that's
saying.
amazing. Yes. That's amazing. That's what we need to be doing. We really need to be sharing this information so other people can get the technologies to do this type of work. Yes. It's not something that you have to be masterfully ascended and just, a spiritual resheet to kind of be able to assist and be a part of, the healing and the global grid work that does need to be done. So really, this is for everybody. So I just really commend you for getting involved and actually doing the work and, sharing this information for people, because it's really important that people understand how powerful they are.
Yes, and how powerful this grid work is, and working with the land and clearing and shifting anything that's been preventing us from accessing our natural organic healing abilities as human multidimensional beings. That's why I love what you do, because there's not a lot of people that seem to have this sort of knowledge, and it's people I think would be really benefited from learning it if they're guided. They should contact you. You do classes, don't you, teaching this as well? So, and how to remove things like seals, which are preventing the earth from being able to access this natural organic healing and that it needs at the moment. In Australia particularly, there's nefarious things that are blocking that as well. So what my other question I was going to ask you was, can you do something like asking the Lords of Karma for a karmic release and dispensation from these nefarious energies that are blocking our beautiful accessing of Mother Earth's gifts? Would that be something that you would say could be helpful as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, anything that becomes conscious from the unconscious, as each one kind of wakes up to the information and kind of shines light into these dark and unseen places. See, the reason why these forces are able to implement these secret control systems and these things that are kind of done in the dark is because no one really knows what's kind of happening, right? It's all done in the unseen. It's done in the unconscious. So it's really important that to be doing that, asking for assistance from the divine, but getting the information out so that way it becomes more collectively conscious and there's more eyes that are observing what's playing out in the unconscious and what's done in the unseen.
Well, I can give you an example of how that could be playing out for people at the moment, or has been playing out. And I think people might be able to get a sense of it through this example. There was the very strong subliminal subconscious programming message that was coming to people to have this. And people were thinking, that's not me. Where's that coming from? And you're getting, you know, information from satellites and subliminal programming from frequency waves and all this sort of thing. I think that was contributing to these messages. And even my partner, who is very much aware of what is in this and would never go there, said that he could feel something coming and saying, you know, you must do this. And so that's an example of what we're talking about in terms of how this impacts on us in a practical, everyday level. You know, that the influence of these nefarious energies that come through us in that way. What can you speak to that, perhaps?
Yes, it definitely comes through subliminal, but it's also coming through programs, and it, you know, feeds upon people's fears. So,
Yes.
the thing about, you know, the collective mind is there is actually a very small percentage that is awakened, fully awakened, which means that they are holding, you know, their fourth strand of DNA is activated, which means that they are ultimately able to access 12th dimensional consciousness, which is what's necessary to be able to identify the programs that are running in one's energy field. So one has to really get to that place to be able to identify the programs that are running. And the thing is that not a lot of people are at that place. And so they're able to implant those subliminal messages into programs that are already technically running in the biology of everyone's body. And beneath that and underneath that, or within that, there's also seals of limitations that are basically blocking and making sure that one's ability to be able to see their belief systems or their programs that are running within their energy field is something that's inaccessible to them. And so, yes, there's a lot of tampering, and there's a lot of distortions that are playing out that are preventing people from really truly being able to access their sovereignty. And it plays on an entire extension of wounds, traumas, triggers. Some of these are individual in the biology, but then some of these are also very much collective and capped and sealed within soul egregore collectives as well. And so there is an immense amount of tampering that's playing out. And also within the grids, these seals are implanted into the Earth's grids and energy fields through several different forms of technologies. But one that I've been talking about a lot has been through planetary branding, which is through, like you were asking about the Saturnian systems, like, can we just rebuke these? Can we just, yes, we very much can rebuke these, but they're also very much branded in the Earth's grids, which means they're kind of branded in everyone's biology as well. So seal removal technology is something that I think we're just really starting to kind of open up to more and more in terms of our spiritual gifts and tools and modalities that we have to kind of combat the nefarious forces that are playing out.
Brilliant. Yes, I'd love to myself explore a bit more about the seal removal. So I have to talk to you about that, because that would be a great skill to learn to be able to help others, I think. And the other thing is, I think what is hand in hand with that work is our own internal healing of our soul wounding. So in anything that is triggering, you know, our fears and our trauma, it's really up to us to take responsibility for that and go in, confront, you know, what perhaps we haven't looked at before, and just, like, you know, doing a spring clean it all out, look at it all, heal it, send yourself, you know, love, forgiveness, and transmute those energies, because that's what they're often hooking into by the sound of it as well, with what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
It all really starts with one's own soul journey, one's own self-awareness. And really being able to access your spirit on a multidimensional level, but you can interdimensionally navigate yourself within a 12-dimensional spectrum. So that way you can work much deeper in terms of clearing those programs and those belief systems that really take one being able to actually expand into the higher chakra system to be able to work in those things. And it's absolutely necessary to be clearing and relieving yourself of all of the things that you kind of hold in terms of a 3D level, particularly get to these higher dimensional understandings of things. So that way you can, move on to the greater work, the grid work, and the collective healing, and be involved.
Yeah. Yes. I totally agree. I spent, over 10 years working very intensively many years ago on just doing all that inner work, because I knew that I'd need it for the future. And so now in the midst of this intensity of what's happening on the planet at the moment, I don't have to focus on that myself right now as much. I mean, we're always doing internal healing and clearing, but I can focus more on perhaps activism and helping in other ways, because I've already done that in preparation for this moment now. So that's been really helpful for me. And you've obviously done those as well. Yeah. So what I wanted to discuss now, which was a brilliant idea of yours that you came up with, was just a little bit about the history of Mu and Lemuria in terms of Australia. I think it's really interesting, isn't it, that they're calling these so-called variants, these names like MU and then of course you've got your Delta and all those sorts of things. So just the subliminal, subconscious meaning behind that, when people hear that sound is also triggering on some level. So that they've done that intentionally, of course, as there are no accidents. So yeah, let's talk about Mu and Lemuria. And as we talk, I can bring up the wonderful diagrams that you've shared with me. So which would be the first one perhaps to bring up, the lost continent one?
Yeah, you can go ahead and just bring up, I did send you a picture of Mu. It was the geographical position of Mu. This was from the James Churchward books of the Golden Age.
Okay, so here is an image of the lost continent.
So this one is Kumari Kandam. So this is an aspect of Lemuria. And I think the importance of talking about this today is it's such an extensive part of the spiritual history for Australians, to kind of know where they came from and to kind of understand why their continent, like we kind of discussed before, is such an impactful place globally. How you guys, carry a lot of the tribal elder leaders globally. And why they're in Australia, why they're here. So I think it's kind of important to go back into the Lemurian history somewhat, so that way, for one, it's empowering. It's empowering to know this stuff.
Yes.
And it's healing, and it's also awakening.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you think there are a lot of light workers in Australia at this time holding the energy for exactly what we're going through now? Sort of like...
Oh, yes, absolutely. I've been messaged by many of them.
Yes.
I've been messaged by people sending me exact coordinates of all of like the underground dumbs. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who sent me stuff, because it's really eye-opening. It's like Pandora's box for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus in on the Australian grids. And then I start to kind of dive in, and it's like, whoa, how much starts coming in, and it almost feels endless. Like I won't even be able to really fully describe and decode everything that's truly coming in, because it's so much.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, so as some of you know, Lemuria was destroyed from great geological upheavals. Kumari Kandam was one that had sunk, that connected from the southern tip of India to Australia. I do feel that this one was probably from nuclear warfare. And I did talk about nuclear warfare, zooming into the landmass of Australia, and some of my other updates that I had done,
Yes.
kind of depicting how the land itself almost looks like it was nuclear warfare.
It's like a wasteland, isn't it? A lot of the central areas, and it's like 2/3 is uninhabitable or something, due to this. You know, there was one theory I heard that the originals, you would use a lot of bushfires and do that, but I mean that the extent of the damage is way more than one that would be, and also forest fires can be regenerative, so that's not really necessarily a thing, but a nuclear would make sense as to why it is so sort of void of and empty of life now. You know, it's even though the desert has a beautiful energy as well, because when you go there, it's just you and your soul, because there's nothing else there. But yeah, you can see the level of sort of destruction or emptiness now in those areas. So yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of goes back to the cosmic warfare. You know, a lot of this was done from the Dracos, and also from the Anunnaki, who were huge components in the warfare between the Atlanteans versus the Lemurians. And so I do kind of feel that Australia was the place where this warfare really went down, where a lot of this went down.
Yes.
And yeah, so I mean, in terms of healing the grids, that might be one place to kind of start energetically, kind of really diving into those timelines, accessing those Akashic fields, whether you do that through just meditating, whether you do that through past life regression, whether you do that from just, you know, telepathic imprint or electrical imprint, you know, thought that's just it already just is, it's just gnosis. Yes. But it's one way to kind of start looking at and shining light and consciousness into some of the unseen things of history to kind of
yes, so doing healing on those timelines. Yep, perfect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to show the picture of Mu that I have.
Yes, definitely.
We could talk a little bit about Mu. I have been diving into a lot of James Churchward's work lately to kind of take me back further than Lemuria. So you can kind of see Mu here, and you can see Australia, and you can see Asia, and you can see America. So Mu was before the time. Now, I don't have my dates completely correct on this, so, you know, people in the comments, feel free to correct me, or, you know, however, but essentially this, I'm seeing in a lot of the timelines that this kind of goes back further than 200,000 years. Mu sunk prior to Atlantis. And the Lemurians were actually kind of the refugees from the sinking of Mu. And so you can kind of see by its location how these refugees would have ended up in places like Hawaii and Easter Islands being the actual remnants of Mu, but then further kind of integrating into Australia, Asia, and North America and South America, the Mayans being a huge civilization of the Lemurians.
Yes.
And so it's really the true cradle of humanity. And what I really like about James Church, did I say Churchward? Did I say his last name correctly? Churchward's work is he decoded what were the Nakal tablets, and the Nakal people were the real descendants from Mu, and they kind of left the remnants of this Akashic field, or this timeline in Earth's history, and brought forth these hieroglyphic tablets that were brought to India. And so he decoded those, and those were written in Naga symbols from the motherland. And so in their creation stories, and from these tablets that came from Mu, they talk about creation actually coming from the seven-headed serpent. And if you know me, and if you've watched my channel, I very much am a Hydra ambassador. So I am a serpent celestial ambassador, to kind of speak on the impact of Hydra here and globally and what this means. And what I kind of found really most interesting and what this has to do with Australia is back in the time of Mu, they really worshipped the Crux constellation. And the Crux constellation, I do believe that this is on the Australian flag.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden in plain sight type thing.
Yeah. So we have this talk a lot lately where, or at least on John Claude's channel. I know you watch John Claude's channel too.
Yeah, Beyond Mystic. Yeah, fantastic. Yes, that's why I found you actually. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for finding me there. That's so exciting. He was talking, a lot of people are saying that what's going on in Australia is basically killing the head of the serpent or killing the head of the snake.
And isn't it interesting too that the originals talk about the rainbow serpent? That's very much part of their Dreamtime, storytelling, and so that relates to that in that way, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. I think that's kind of what we need to kind of look at is when we talk about killing the head of the Hydra or the seven-headed serpent, that I think it kind of distorts collectively. What is our collective goal spiritually? Like what is our shared goal and things? Because
to ascend, to evolve individually and collectively, and to come to a world where there's peace and love and joy, and we're all loved and supported, I guess is the overriding goal for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. No, it definitely is. I think where I was going with that context is when you look at all the intricacies of the galactic warfare, and you look about what's kind of playing out. Well, we have the Draco hybrids doing this, or we have the Anunnaki hybrids doing this. And then, we talk about slaying the head of the Hydra. Well, we can't technically do these things because at the core of our essence of the motherlands, of where we all kind of originated from, that was at the core essence of the creation and their creation tablets and the Nakal tablets. And you can see how the distortions kind of have been, flipped back and forth and played out and taken and removed and demonized and things like this. So I think on a greater scale, getting to that place where we can all collectively be on board, it really would help if history wasn't so withheld, to understand, our true origins and these true spiritual entities and forms that are really actually part of the guardianships here on this earth. Hydra being very much a seraph or a seraphim, which is very much guardian consciousness, and is also what's assisting with the protection of the Anangu people and the rainbow serpent that are there protecting those lands.
So if you break that down to sort of basic language, you're saying that we need to, in a sense, acknowledge, recognize, and accept and perhaps love the aspect of ourself that is the dark aspect, the shadow aspect of self, face that, accept that. Is that in basic terms what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. And also kind of take a look at what's been demonized throughout history, what has been casted in the shadows. And very much in order to be able to brace unity consciousness more and to kind of have a more collective shared understanding of where we ultimately came from. And so that way we can really embody that guardianship or that guardian consciousness, because that's really what kind of grid keeping and gatekeeping is all about when we talk about scanning into the grids and removing these technologies and, really working within our modalities and our abilities and our gifts to kind of clear the energies, clear the Stargate portals, make sure that the current and the flow and the soul river lines from Uluru can be felt around the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a powerful energy, Uluru. It's pronounced. But you're doing very well with your pronunciation, I've got to say.
Oh, thank you so much.
But Yeah, no, I think that the importance of Uluru can't be underestimated as well in Australia. And to be able to really fully access the energy of that would be such a gift. But we have at the moment things that are in place that are trying to prevent us fully accessing that energy, haven't we?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of forces that are really trying to work against those things. Like some of the US Navy facilities, the H.H. Holt communication station with the Saturnian branding up in Exmouth, I believe. Also, Pine Gap, Area 52, all of these places that, work on the side of the the black robed community, the Saturnian community, to try to enforce and, basically, siphon off of these organic energies that heal the world, and, create frequency fences around these things and try to block the bulk of your population, which resides down in the, I believe it's the southern eastern corner of Australia. It's vital that the people there receive those transmissions from Uluru. And so,
wouldn't it be great, just as you're speaking, envisaging groups of people around Australia working on different areas and being given different, maybe there could be one overriding group that is in touch with them all, and they're all in charge of working on the different areas and clearing the systems, groups of people. That would be brilliant. I'm just seeing that in the future.
yeah, absolutely. And getting people the information to do it. I think a lot of people are like, how do we do it? Like, how do we actually do it?
Exactly. And they feel sort of like a little bit overwhelmed, or like they don't have the gifts or the talents to do it. But like you said earlier, you don't necessarily need extensive, abilities. You just need to perhaps get the knowledge of how to work with it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have we covered all the information on that diagram of Mu? And would you like to go to that other last diagram perhaps that you've mentioned?
Yes. So
Okay.
there's actually a link that I sent you that is just some locations that I charted that are holding the original crystal grid networks globally. And we can just kind of briefly touch on this. I think it's just, this is kind of a fun thing to look at. This is definitely a more hopeful aspect of the positive things that are playing out in terms of what's working for humanity here.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So this map that you're about to pull up, this is considered the conscious crystal grid network on the Earth. These are all of the locations that are really holding a lot of this crystal energy and celestial radiation, and also celestial seeds of humanity, similarly in the ways that Uluru is holding at that location. So this is considered, all of these locations that are charted here, this is part of the conscious crystal grid network. This is aligned to one's grids in the body. As they become more crystalline, they're able to kind of tune into this global network. What's interesting about this is the Pleiadians actually created this crystal grid network from what I feel was their progenitor mother race, which was Hydra. But this was created about 200,000 years ago. And these are 24 crystal points on the Earth that act as stargates that basically anchor in the purity of the Earth's celestial consciousness. And each one of these points hold the crystal consciousness seeds of the original Earth builders. And so in terms of integrating this light or integrating this information, all one really kind of needs to do is kind of tune into one of these locations and really anchor their energy here, integrate their energy here. And
you can do that just with visualization if you can't physically get there, because of course at the moment with lockdown we're a little limited where we can go and everything, but you can just do that with your visualizations as well, can't you, Amanda? Just tune in and focus and connect in that way.
Yes, absolutely. That's one way to do it. I take things a little bit further with mine because I'm a little out there with it. I have a picture that I could actually show you here on my desk table if I can find it. But there's actually a technique you can do. It's one way to scan into Stargate sites, but I don't know if I have my picture here. Well, I'll try to explain it without my diagram.
Okay.
You use something called geometric induction. So a lot of these gate sites are encoded to geometries that actually run in the grids around the gate sites themselves. One that I've kind of thoroughly decoded is the Giza pyramids in Egypt.
I've been to them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Awesome. I've been there too. It's such a beautiful Stargate is so powerful there.
Yes. Yes.
But they're really running octagonal geometry in the landmass there. And one way you can see it is in the architecture. And, it's usually symbolically encoded around the city. You can kind of, as you go to the locations, is where you can kind of pick up on the geometry that's running. But what I've come to find is you can do something called geometric induction, which is where you bring the symbol codes into your third eye. And then you can, once you bring it in and your DNA attunes to the scalar wave mechanics within the living light energy within the geometry itself, you can then kind of send that encoding through gate systems and then anchor that encoding into the Stargate sites themselves. And when you do that, it unlocks more of your psychic abilities to actually scan energetically into that gate, work with the energy there, receive the initiations, and receive the radial identification and differentiation within each Stargate and what's running there.
I'm actually going to go back and type your words that you just spoke so that I have it written down and so I can go through it that way, because that was really profound.
Yeah. There's a lot of masterful technologies that we can use to do this work. But again, it's all about, being able to get the information out to lots of people, get them the technologies and the education so that way they can do these things, because they really aren't too difficult as long as you can visualize, as long as you can,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I stop sharing the screen now?
Yes, sure.
Sure. Okay, beautiful. Well, that's fantastic to know. I myself do Pleiadian light work with my full sensory perception healing work that I do. So I very much work with Pleiadian energy in that way. And yeah, so it's great to know that that's just that connection there. So what I wanted to discuss with you next, Amanda, if I could, is the information about Australia. And what I really would like to also ask you about is, you've talked in your videos that you've done on your wonderful YouTube channel, the fact that we have prison colony trauma body in Australia at the moment that is being triggered, and we need to collectively heal that as well. So what are some perhaps potentially ways that we can work towards healing that? Because, that whole incredible level of oppression, control, repression, censorship, you can't speak, you have to put this on, you can't breathe, all these things. It's all related to that. So if once we go in and we really heal the foundational core of where that's coming from, we'll be able to shift the energy. So what are some perhaps ways that you can suggest that we can really work, all the Australians here? And I think it's even more powerful when Australian people who are here on the ground are able to do that. So everyone who's watching here that's in Australia as well as globally, I mean, everyone can do it, but I really encourage everyone as well in Australia to do this work. So what can you suggest for that?
Well, I think it comes down to acknowledging the trigger points, where they're kind of located in the grids. What I was kind of decoding as I was looking at this from a remote viewing perspective, and absolutely you're correct. Those who are there, like you guys are genetically encoded to the land. Yes. So what you guys do there is going to be most impactful, most revelational. Although I know for a fact there are people all over the world right now that are remoting in to kind of assist you guys energetically.
But thank you.
Yeah, yes, you're amazing. But yes, identifying the trigger locations and the trigger points. I mean, just as here in the States, we have a lot of locations that are really on descending grid cell cycles, which means the symptoms are most felt in these particular areas.
Yes.
Is there actually being enough done in those areas to relieve those places right now? Not really. But I think just the more awareness collectively on those types of things, the fact that the penal past could, very much spiritually and energetically be a part of the trauma body that sets within each one collectively there. So the more people that can identify those parts of themselves that may hold trigger points to those parts of the lands, to those particular areas, whether those be the places that the British actually brought the prisoners to Australia, and they're now museums, and they're now places that people go to kind of get and some entertainment or whatever. I don't think that's the case for all of the places, but it's definitely to become aware if those traumas and triggers still reside in your own personal energy field.
And the stories, interesting stories, Amanda, of people stealing a loaf of bread and then getting deported, to Australia for that, or a box of matches or something like this, and then they were deported. So fascinating when you look at that history. And I will say too that my Tuesday night soul healing group, we're doing some healing on the ancestral penal colony sort of type energies, tracing down the ancestral lines, both on the mother and the father side. So hopefully that will also contribute to help.
And and then you got to think about it in terms too, is this suppression history what disallows Australians from really feeling like maybe they can, because I do know that Australians are, at least from what I've heard and some of the insider intel that I've gotten, is that they don't want to make waves. They want peace. They want to kind of go with the flow. They don't want to have to, ruffle up anyone's feathers. They just want things to be peaceful. And this could be a part of that penal programming where the criminal history, the criminal past has, made people shift in a mentality in a way that they aren't as
empowered.
Yes.
So they're not fully standing in their power because there's something sort of repressing them from speaking up, because they have an inbuilt subconscious fear that they're going to be punished.
Exactly. Exactly. So so really doing that inner work, really wanting to look at your past, look at your ancestry. How far back did this actually impact you directly in your genetic line, maternally or paternally, like you were just saying, like doing the group work with that, kind of knowing where you stand within all of that, and definitely making those conscious choices to not allow those wounds to continue to be passed on to your offspring, for the future of Australia and the future of humanity.
Yes. Doing a DNA genetic sort of healing on oneself is really helpful in that way. And, that the feeling of, what a real message that's coming up in October is to stand up and do not consent, do not comply if you don't, as a free will soul, agree with what's happening in the world around you. And it takes awareness of everything we've just talked about to be able to do that, because there might be subconscious blocks and obstacles for you doing that, to do with this penal history that are making you just go along with everything, even if you don't agree with it. So once you're aware that that's happening, then you can actually address it, and then you can change it. But if you don't know that that's going on in the background, you can't change what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just to kind of allude off of that, on a greater level, the greater forces or the nefarious forces, like within those seals and things like that, you know, those are seals that sit on collective egregores, spiritual egregores, of traumas and timelines and things that have happened throughout past as well. So, I mean, that's a greater level of consciousness that I think surfaces as one starts to really decode that subconscious.
Okay. Could you explain what that word egregores mean for the people that are listening that don't know what that word means?
It is it's like a collective of spiritual soul identity that exists in unification based upon a particular either, you know, identity or energy signature here on this earth that also pertains to a shared collective experience here.
Right. How do you spell that word? I'll put it up as we're speaking.
Egregore?
Yes.
Oh boy.
A-double-G?
I think I'll probably get it wrong. I think it's a double G.
Yeah, I feel it is. I'm just intuiting.
Okay.
I've never seen it, but I'm thinking it's A-double-G. I'll find it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Don't put me to the spelling test here, because I actually commonly misspell that word when I'm typing it. So yeah. I know I will misspell it here.
Yes. Okay. Oh, that's great to be able to explain that to people. Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, it's just been such a gift to be able to connect with you and your beautiful energy, and to be able to share all this amazing knowledge that people really need to hear at the moment, I believe, and to share with others. So if you're listening to this chat today, please share this on social media so other people can learn about this. And, you know, there might be people out there that want to actually study this and then share the knowledge with others and do the work that the planet needs at the moment on clearing and transmuting these energies. So, Amanda, what is perhaps something just to finish today that you think is important to share to the collective, both in Australia and globally, that might be really beneficial at this time?
Oh, well, thank you so much. You know, I think what I'm finding is that this time and what's happening right now is that it's really actually forcing people to take a deeper look at their lives and what they're allowing, what they're consenting to, what they're actually aligned to inside themselves on a soul level. I think that we don't have to look at all of this as necessarily so bad or so, you know, detrimental to the world, because really this is just taking everybody a lot deeper inside themselves. And it's really actually transformational. We're going through a transformation, and transformation is painful. And that's what I really kind of see is, you know, all of these things you don't like and you see in the world, and this reflection of this, well, it's time to dig deeper inside yourself. And it is time to really decide what you're aligned to, what you're not aligned to. And if you're really not aligned to something on a soul level, then it's time to really take a deeper look at your life and what changes can you make, so that way these types of things maybe aren't directly affecting you as deeply or as degradationally in your life.
I think getting to that point of non-attachment, where we're able to be in sort of a neutrality with things, shows that we're clear energetically, and we're aiming to be relatively clear, aren't we, in our energy field, so we're not carrying these traumas and things into future you know, lifetimes. So in our soul path, we want to clear as much as possible now.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a great opportunity to self-reflect, because in the harshest times is when you actually do have the most growth. And so I think everyone's just really growing right now. It's huge growth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a beautiful note to end on. Well, thank you so much. I hope we can do this chat again. And it's just such a blessing to connect with you, Amanda. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for the planet at the moment. You're having a huge impact. And, I hope that your knowledge gets out to as many people as possible, because I think it's really crucial information for people to know on the planet at this time, lost ancient knowledge and wisdom that we need to reclaim. So thank you. Beautiful to chat. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.